This podcast is being sponsored by the Rise Up Project.
Trust the process. Pain is power. All great things take time. I am unbreakable. Unbreakable.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the Unbreakables podcast, episode 14. I am your host, Jay, and today I have the pleasure of sitting down with our youngest guest to date. He is the podcast host, author of Rise of the Young, a public speaker, serial entrepreneur, and social media expert. After being diagnosed with interspinous ligament damage at 15 years old, he was able to turn his negative situation to a positive outcome. Please help me welcome Casey Adams.
Thank you so much. That was amazing.
No, you're welcome, man. And thank you so much, too, for letting me know about Build Your Empire.
Totally.
I noticed it was still on your website, so.
Hey, no worries.
No, man, but like, I really, really appreciate you. As I mentioned, thank you for taking the time. And here with the Unbreakables podcast, the goal is really to dive into the minds and into the souls of who you were before you are today. So
Yeah.
It's really touching base on the hardships, the failures, the adversities, and what you learned to overcome all those to get you to where you are today.
Absolutely.
So with every guest, I like to take it back just a little bit. I know one of your biggest hardships was when you got into a neck brace due to the football injury. So if we could just take it back a little past that, and we'll slowly transition from there.
Totally. Absolutely. No, I appreciate you having me on. And for those that are just, tuning into this show, like she said, my name's Casey Adams. I'm 19 years old right now. And just to give some context, over the last 3-4 years, I've been, like she said, social media marketing, hosting events. I've had a podcast for over 2 years. I've done over 150 interviews with high caliber entrepreneurs and individuals, people like Larry King or Jordan Belfort or Gary Vaynerchuk, and the list goes on and on. But at 15 years old, I had a very, depressing 6 months of my life that set me up for this last 4 or 5 years. And it was, 15 years old, going to the first day of hitting practice, going into varsity football, that I got diagnosed with interspinous ligament damage. And what that is overall is instability of the spine. I was sad, depressed. And that being said, though, I'm from a small town in Richmond, Virginia. I moved to Arizona a year and a half ago. And growing up in Virginia, I played sports my entire life. I played hockey for 10 years, and I played lacrosse for a couple of years. Then it transitioned into football. And I think the most important thing about this lesson of adversity is I had to recreate my identity of who I was and who I wanted to be and who I wanted to become. And I think anyone that's listening, especially in a time like this of coronavirus and the quarantine and how so much uncertainty is out there, that everyone may be experiencing this in some way, shape, or form. Whether, they got laid off, unemployment's up, it's through the roof. And I think a lot of people are having these pivoting points right now that they might not even be aware of, but they'll look back on in a year, 2, 3 years and say, wow, like it was in that moment of uncertainty is when I truly found myself and my passion and what I wanted to do. And that happened to me when 2015, when I was a sophomore in high school, where I walked in the doctor one morning expecting my neck to be all good and I'd be on the field in 2 weeks, to walking out saying you can never play football again. You were almost paralyzed and you got to be in a neck brace for 6 months. And it was in that moment where I just lost my identity of who I previously was. And it was, like I said, depressed. I was depressed and angry at the world. And it slowly but surely started to transition into, I got involved with personal development and entrepreneurship. And by having so much time by myself at home in my neck brace, I was, a consumer of social media and watching people on YouTube, where I started finding people like Gary Vaynerchuk or Ty Lopez that opened up these different doors to self-education. And it really just spiraled from there. But it was definitely a challenging time, but I'm truly grateful for it because it was a blessing in disguise.
Absolutely. I think when we're in those moments of hardships and depression, we start to question every single thing in our life. And we don't really see it while we're in that moment until, like you said, looking back in a year, 2 years, you can look at adversity and be like, it was a blessing in disguise.
Totally.
So in your darkest moment, looking back, when you were in a neck brace, when you were depressed and unfulfilled, how do you think that changed the trajectory of your life for better?
I mean, I think it's, it led me into everything I'm doing now. I was a 15, 16-year-old kid, sophomore in high school. I'm the youngest of three brothers, and I saw my brothers graduate and go to community college and then, go to college, drop out. And I understood that, like, prior to me getting injured, I was like, I know I want to do something that's not traditional, based on the fact of I've seen my brothers do what they're told, follow the system, and then have debt, don't know what they want to do, and they have no direction. So I was able to witness this just through my brothers, which I'm so grateful for. But with the injury and now transitioning to this new identity of like, okay, where do I spend my time? It was very important to go all in on something. And the first, 2-3 months of my neck brace, and just by being in solitude, I wasn't doing anything. But it was the transition of, for example, I found Ty Lopez, and he was talking about health, wealth, love, and happiness. And I dove into his 67-step program and started to learn social media marketing, and just, became obsessed with entrepreneurship and business and becoming the best version of myself, especially from a mentality perspective,
Right.
because I was depressed. I didn't have full control over my mind or how I'm reacting to the situation. And I just fell in love with reading and, listening to highly successful people. And it was during that process where I recreated this new version of myself, where I became obsessed with building new skill sets, building new habits, and just doing everything new that was coming into my life. And I think it slowly started to transition into like, okay, how can I make money doing this? And got involved with social media marketing, and I've been building my brand for the past 4 or 5 years from a personal brand perspective. And then so many different opportunities opened up with events and different companies and everything that I'm doing now. But it was definitely, like I said before, a blessing in disguise that it changed everything, plain and simple. Like, looking back, it's like, okay, if that didn't happen, would I be in college? Would I have had the mindset to get into what I'm doing now? Would I have just, played lacrosse and tried to go to UVA? I don't know that, but I've interviewed a lot of great people, and they always tell me, like, everyone has those pivoting moments that, as you reflect on that, it truly defines your character and who you are. And I'm, like I said, truly grateful for it. And it definitely makes me for like who I am.
Absolutely, man. And I feel like you are an example that everybody could to look upon and be like, wow, if he can do it, we can do it. No matter the age, no matter the outcome, like it's amazing, man.
Totally.
So what advice can you give someone, especially in these times with COVID-19, the stay-at-home order? Like you said, it feels like they're isolated, they're confined, they start to question everything. And I feel like this is a time when they start to look deeper within themselves, correct?
Yep.
So what advice can you give someone who might feel lost, depressed, or maybe lost their job and feel like there's no way out?
I would say this. I think, just especially in a time like this where, everything's shut down, you're stuck at home. This is, for example, from a tangible example of myself. People this is based on my journey and what I ask my mentors, is people who are depressed and, stuck in their own mind, they aren't actively doing new things. They're stuck in their old routine, which allows them to be stuck in their habits, which allows them to be stuck in this endless cycle of, okay, same thing, same day, same thing, same day, right? So for me, I try to maximize times like this because it's an opportunity zone. And I believe, like, for example, this week, it's Monday, April 6th. I've booked 15 podcast interviews this week. I'm going to be doing like 2 or 3 a day. I just wrapped up my second interview of the day before this. I never have done 15 interviews in a week. You know what I'm saying? Like, ever. And I'm looking at this situation, like, everyone's stuck at their home. Everyone's, doing the things that they might have been putting off because they have the time to do it. And I believe you need to ask yourself, what have you been putting off? Is it ordering that book? Is it doing that at-home workout? Is it reaching out to that friend? Is it starting that business? Is it, buying that online program that you can watch to learn a new skill set? Like, everyone coming out of this situation, whether it lasts 2 months or 2 years, I'm not sure about that. But you can grow so much right now because you're given the time, right? At the end of the day, there's many things that aren't equal in life, but the one thing that is the amount of time we have in a day, right? So I believe, like, just for this time being, the last 3 weeks, I've been drinking a gallon of water a day. That's a new habit of mine that I've been very disciplined on, doing 250 push-ups a day, reading more. And yes, I've done those things, but even asking myself, like, okay, what can I sharpen during this, uncertainty? Because at the end of the day, I want to come out of this situation, like I said, more defined, and I want to continue sharpening the iron that I've built up to this point. And right now is the perfect time for that. But I would start off, for the people listening, asking yourself, what have you been putting off, right? What skill set do you want to learn, especially in the economy right now? And my buddy Kieran and I, we were having a conversation about, seniors in college and how they're graduating, and now unemployment's up like crazy and not everyone's hiring. Like, what skill sets can you build to become more valuable? That's the question you got to ask yourself, because at the end of the day, you're paid based on the value you provide, right? So anyone listening to this, like, what can you start today? What can you work on today? And also just take time to think, like, who are you and where do you want to go? Who do you want to become? Because I believe in, especially my family, they get stuck in their routine behavior where they let a situation like this maybe bring them down. And I believe I look at it the complete opposite of, how can you be fueled by a situation like this and control what you can control, right? You can't control the economy. You can't control what the politicians are saying, but you can control your daily habits, how you, your attitude towards the situation. And I think that's the most important thing of all this.
Absolutely. And I think you nailed it. And it's a really good point. Instead of looking at it as, oh my gosh, poor me, you can look at it as an opportunity. And this is a perfect time where everything right now is kind of on a autopilot. It's slow, time has started. Yeah. And it's like, holy crap. Like you said, everybody is home.
Yep.
What can I do? Start evaluating yourself, start reflecting, realigning your values, your daily rituals, your habits. And I feel like it's a perfect opportunity. So as far as starting your podcast, what inspired you to start Rise of the Young? Was it in that moment?
Yeah, well, so my neck injury happened like 2015, and the entire year of 2016, I was just obsessed with learning and, building out, just reading books and connecting with people on social media or trying to build a brand. I didn't start my podcast till the end of 2017. It was like December 27th, a couple of days after Christmas. And throughout the year of 2017, I was investing every single month going to California. The first event I ever spoke at was in San Diego, California, that my buddy Caleb Maddox invited me to. Went out there, met some great people. The day I get back from this event, I reach out to Ty Lopez and I'm like, hey, Ty, 8 months ago, I was in a neck brace, depressed, didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. After taking some of your programs, I just spoke at this event with Caleb and this dude, Dan Fleshman, and people that he knew. And he ends up getting back to me the same day and says, hey, man, love the story. Tell me more. 2 weeks later, he flies my mom and I out to LA. This is the first time I was ever in Los Angeles. He shoots videos with me. He's, just promoting me like as a testimonial for his program. Right. And from that moment, that's where I connected, for example, with my roommate now, Kieran. He hit me up on Instagram. We became good friends. And the entire rest of the year, which is greatly important, I was just dedicated to traveling, whether that's to go to LA to go to an event or to go to New York or Miami. Like, I was obsessed with just getting out there, shaking hands, meeting people, going to events. And that was really the catalyst to building my brand, to building new connections, to seeing the world from a different angle, because I didn't grow up traveling. I didn't experience any type of, major city. I didn't fly on a plane until I bought the ticket myself. So I was obsessed, and it was a big motivation of mine early on, was to travel, because I would, follow all these people on Instagram, and I was so intrigued with, wow, like, I want to meet that person or go to that city and see the world, because it's something I didn't experience growing up. But towards the end of 2017, after going to all these different events, I hosted 2 of my own events with Kieran, that I was like, wow, I built up this network. I built up this audience, this brand. And I always heard Gary Vee talking about podcast, start a podcast. So I read his book, Crushing It. At the end of it, it was the last chapter, talked about podcasting. I reach out to him and I'm like, hey, Gary, I would love to, set up a meeting with you, 5 minutes. He ends up getting back to me and he's like, let's do it in February, March of 2018. So I started going for myself. I was like, I want to interview 30, 40 people by the time I meet with Gary, so that I can show him tactical things that I've done to ask him questions about. And it's funny. Like, I didn't start the podcast to interview Larry King or to interview a billionaire or whatever it was. I started it to just have conversations with the people in my network already to strengthen relationships and to also just ask questions so I can like learn something, right? But it sort of shifted over the last like 2.5 years to more like I became obsessed with my curiosity in people and the stories. And I want to, I interviewed Larry King, who's just the legendary broadcaster of itself. And by doing things like that and having those wins, it's given me a completely new perspective of like the opportunity for a podcast and the opportunity for the industry as a whole and what I want to do in it. And, my long-term goals are like, I want to interview Ellen and Oprah and Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel and The Rock and Kevin Hart and all these world-class people, not only to tell their stories from like a young individual's perspective, but because there's access and opportunity to be connected with the elites of the world if you provide value or if you have an audience, if you have a show. And the podcast industry is just in a growing industry regarding, the advertising revenue last year almost hit $1 billion. So many shows are popping up. Big networks like Spotify are acquiring podcast companies like Anchor and Parcast and all these different brands, where it's motivated me to look at the industry more than just the show, but to also do my part in it, which I'm working on right now, which I can't talk about too much, but building up this whole new podcast software that I'm super excited about that I believe will truly fill a void in the space that I'm just passionate about. And it's definitely evolved from just like, buying $100 microphone and interviewing people on Skype in my bedroom to then having the opportunity to interview Larry King, who's the legendary broadcaster, to now looking at it more as an industry. And I'm super grateful for it because it's been the podcast that's opened up every door from a relationship perspective, and it's gotten me connected with a lot of people.
Absolutely. And I can see that. And I watched your Larry King interview. It was an amazing interview.
Thank you.
For people that are unaware, what is your strategy when it comes to reaching out to high influencers such as Larry King, Gary?
Yeah, totally. So the simple answer is building a personal brand and reaching out through DMs on Instagram. Like that's been my just simple strategy of how I've booked every single guest has came from a simple ask on Instagram. But the catch and what is truly the value is it wasn't me with any value or any audience or any experience. I was reaching out to just people that I already knew first. I interviewed people that I already had a relationship with that it wasn't impossible to hear back. I built up my, interviewing skill set and talent and learned how to communicate effectively in an interview where as I built my brand, whether that's audience on Instagram or certain ways to leverage credibility, like getting verified on Instagram, it became easier through leverage. Meaning if I interview, Grant Cardone, it's going to be easier to interview people that he's associated with if whether that's use his name for good reason of like, hey man, just interviewed Grant. I know you're a friend of his and you've done some stuff with him. It would be such a pleasure to have you on my show. It was a lot of like strategic reaching out and not spamming people, not coming off as annoying, but reaching out of value and being consistent. Like I wanted to book so many guests. Like I interviewed this guy, Bob Menery, this week, who's a huge sports broadcaster. He's hilarious, has 2.5 million followers. I reached out to him probably like 4 or 5 times over the last year and a half. He's been too busy. He doesn't have time, and I get it. But I reached out on like last week on Thursday, and I was like, hey man, let's do the podcast today. He's like, okay, I have time today, quarantine, let's go. So it's like for every guest, you have to understand majority, it's not a one-time reach out, hear back, do it. But nowadays it has become easier through, if I mentioned Larry King or Jordan Belfort or these high quality people, it's easier. But for the people that are starting a podcast today and where I was 2 years ago, I had, no experience in broadcasting. I had no connections to say, hey, can you get all these people on my show? It was just me being relentless on Instagram, building a brand, putting out content, and doing it for the right reason. Like I'm not interviewing people to just be like, oh my God, I want to have on my show. Like I'm curious about their story. I want to learn from them. And I feel like I'm doing a service to the younger generation by being 19 years old and having the opportunity to sit down with these people where I'm passionate about it. And I think a lot of the people I've interviewed, they can feel that and they're willing to help young people who are trying to do things for a good cause. Right. To my point though, you're going to hear a lot of no's. You're not going to hear back from a lot of people, but that should not discourage you from continuing to reach out or to just have a show. But That has been my strategy, but the product that I'm building now is something I believe that will help a lot of people cut their learning curve and speed up that process.
Oh, man, cut the work in half, right?
Yeah, totally.
No, and like you said, you can't be annoying. You have to elegantly persist.
Totally.
And like I said, it's not can you be a guest on my show? It's like the kind of value, what is the value, the service that you can provide to the guest, to their audience, and so forth. So I think you touched on it. So can you talk to me about your pullback method?
Yeah, I mean, what part of it exactly?
Like, because I know you mentioned in your previous interviews how you would build events, but it was kind of a place where you can bring people together.
Yeah. So absolutely, I'll bring up the one that I did last October. So I've hosted dozens of events, from masterminds to big events with hundreds of people to just, small networking events. And Ty Lopez told me a line back in 2017. He was like, you can go to events or you can host events, but if you do both, your network will expand massively. And last year I did 2 events with Young and Reckless with my buddy Drama, who's CEO and founder of Young and Reckless. And the more recent one last October, it was phenomenal. We had about 500 people there. We had speakers like Rob Dyrdek. We had Robert Greene at the first one. We had just Trevor Moad, who's a sports guy. So many quality people. The CEO of Revolve, which is a massive company. And tickets were $50 or $100. Super low ticket, high value. And it's one of those things where we didn't profit highly on the event at all. It wasn't for that purpose. It was for brand value. It was for bringing people together. I hosted the whole event. I wasn't like a necessary speaker at all. But by hosting events and being an event host, it's allowed me, and back to the point of pullback method, to if I interview 50 people and then I go host an event and then I therefore go ask 5 or 10 of them to come speak at my event, it strengthens the relationship. It's in person. And if I can come through and sell out an event with 500 people where they're public, like they're speaking in front of an audience, that brings value to them. If I can say, hey man, we got a venue, get the events happening this date, it's going to be 300 to 500 people, come speak. It's valuable for them, and it shows them that, oh wow, like he can actually fill up a room, because a lot of people, they'll have lots of followers and whatever, but they can't fill up a room with 10 people, right? So through the audience and through name leverage and just through working with these great people and having them speak at my events, it's allowed me to get closer to these people, to, like you said, to pull them back into my network. Because I always tell people who are looking to build a brand, especially young people, is how can you collaborate with people? Is it you're a photographer and you do a free photo shoot for someone? Is it you have a podcast and you interview someone and you push it out to your audience and it's valuable? Do you have an event and give them a platform to speak? Like, always look at things that people value. You never want to just reach out to someone and take. That's not how you can build a relationship, right? You're the one reaching out, so you have to be of value. But I think it's definitely changed now. Like, I haven't done an event since October. Now, depending on how the rest of the year goes with coronavirus and public gatherings, like, I felt like my last event that I did with Young and Reckless was just like the pinnacle of, like, not pinnacle at all, but very important to see from, okay, let me have this small gathering at a local hotel, to then having like people who I admire, Rob Dyrdek, who I've been watching since I was 8 years old, to meet him, to have him speak at my event, to interact with these legendary people through the help of Drama and his network and getting close to him. Like, that all stemmed from a podcast interview I did with Drama. And I always tell people, like, I could have interviewed Drama and, boom, that's that. But we've been able to get really close. And then we've had 2 events together and build and do business together because we've found strategic ways to do that. And I think that's the value of a podcast, where it's opened up 150 doors with different people I've interviewed, and maybe 4 or 7 or 13 of those doors have led to an opportunity or a business venture or, something else with that person. But I look at it long-term of, like, nurturing and building relationships is something I'm obsessed with and I'm passionate about it. And I always look for ways to pull them back into my world. And right now it's like, whether that's going live on Instagram with someone during this time, to hit them up like, yo, like I went live with Ryan Serhant last week, and we had, like 11,000 people in there throughout a 30-minute period. And I haven't talked to Ryan in probably a year, right? But it's like we touch base and we talk, and it's great. And he sees me, I see him. There's value for our audiences, and it's cool. So, like, look for ways to do that in your life and in your brand and for whatever you're building, because I think it's super important when it comes to relationships.
Absolutely. And like you said, it's about building genuine and authentic relationships, especially with these world-class leaders. So I
Totally.
think the value that you're providing is amazing. So for someone interested in building their personal brand, what are your top 3 tactics and strategies that you can provide when it comes to building their online presence?
Yeah, so I would say the most important thing is the understanding of personal branding. I look at it as building the most authentic perception of you on social media or online. And through that, you will always have your personal brand. I think that's the most important thing that I want people to know, where you can sell companies. You can't sell you, right? And I've always had so much emphasis on building a brand since I was, 15 years old, from documenting the books I'm reading to hosting events to having a podcast to working with clients on my Instagram and just, helping people through that vehicle. And I think the key to personal branding to begin with is, why are you doing it? Like, what is your end goal purpose? Because I know whether that's musicians who are promoting their music on social media, or TikTokers that are just doing it to be funny or be comedians and they monetize off YouTube or whatever it is, to people like myself who are podcasting, to just massively successful business owners that just want a presence on there. So I think anyone that's looking to build a personal brand, like, ask yourself, what's your intent? For me, it's not to be the most famous person in the world. It's to build relationships right now. And I believe a personal brand is fluid, and it will change and adapt, and it will never be stagnant if you are not stagnant. Like, as I grow and more opportunities open up and I go through seasons of ups and downs and business transitions, my personal brand will as well. And I think the most important thing, just as 3 tactics, is number 1, know why you're doing it, right? Are you doing it to build relationships? Are you doing it to promote your company? Are you doing it to just tell your story, to be a voice? Once you figure that out, like, pick a niche. For me, it's maybe business, podcasting, entrepreneurship, traveling. I always tell people, pick your 3 pillars as number 2. What 3 things do you want to be known for? What 3 things do you want to talk about? You have to be very meticulous with the content you put out so you don't confuse people. So for me, I like to say mine are podcasting, networking, and traveling. And I have a podcast. I talk about people. That's networking. And then I travel to do that. And I travel a lot when the quarantine isn't happening. And I believe that it's very important to pick those 3 things that you want to be known for, because if you don't, and you're just, firing in random directions, one day you're doing this, one day you're doing that, that won't build brand loyalty. People won't know what you're doing or why you're doing it, and it'll cause a misalignment. So that'd be number 2. And number 3 is just consistency. Like, I've been doing not only the same tactics, but I've enhanced them throughout my journey, but whether that's reaching out to 10 people a day, or responding back to my comments, or doing Instagram stories every day, to testing on LinkedIn or Twitter or Snapchat or YouTube, like, it's just, you have to build it into your daily habit. Don't make a personal brand and, make it annoying. Like, build it into your daily habits. Like, how can you be fluid with it, to look at it as like a part of you, not like this thing you have to maintain as an image.
Right.
Live through it in an organic, authentic way. And that'd be the top 3 things I recommend, because at the end of the day, consistency is the name of the game. Where I know with what I'm doing on social, yes, one day I want to have 10 people that are working exclusively on the Casey Adams personal brand. Right now, I do all my posting, I do all the podcast, uploading, marketing, whatever, just because I'm passionate about it. But I know it will transition and grow, and there's more room for like content. If I could post 3-4 videos a day, great. But I know for me, there's always growth, and I want anyone who's listening to this to look at yourself like, okay, where are you right now? What can you put out there for people to listen to? Because at the end of the day, social media is storytelling. It's documentation, and you're not putting it out there for you. Like, you're not doing this podcast so that you can look at it later and listen. Like, you're experiencing it, and it's for an audience. It's for a bigger person. It's for a bigger purpose, and it's for others, right? So ask yourself, how can I be of value to others? How can my content like benefit people? Because that's what social media is. It's a network of people coming together, and they decide who they want to follow. But that would be my top 3 recommendations for anyone that's looking to build a brand.
Fire. Appreciate it, man. So what do your daily rituals and disciplines consist of on a day-to-day, especially in these times now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the last 6 months, I've traveled a lot. In February, I was in Hawaii and Australia and Bali for speaking at an event. And then in January, I was in LA for like 20 days. And same thing with in December, but I've always had like daily rituals, but they've never been as consistent as I like in terms of like waking up or this or that, depending on where I'm traveling. But as of right now, just from like a fundamental perspective, I've been waking up at 6 o'clock every day. And I've always drifted between like 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock, depending on how late I stay up. I always try to maximize my sleep and get, minimum 6 hours if I can. And when it comes to habits, like for example, I'll bring it up again, drinking a gallon of water a day, hitting a workout. And when the gym's closed like it is right now, doing push-ups and just figuring out a way to, continue to grow from a physical side, muscles and endurance, all that sort of stuff. I love going on runs. I haven't done that in a while, but overall for goal setting, I take time every single day to write down what I'm grateful for. I have this journal that's in my living room where it's 600 pages. It's like my gratitude journal. It's where I express all my thoughts. It's something that one day in 150 years, I want people to look at and be like, yo, that's dope, about how he expressed himself and spoke to himself in the future. And I think for me, writing down and, taking that 10, 20, 30, 40 minutes to write, I write a note to my future self, like every day, like, hey, this is what you're going through. This is what's happening, positive, negative, whatever it is, to just put myself in a position to look back and see growth. And, also writing down 10 things that I'm grateful for, being very specific. And also on a daily basis, like reaching out to people that I love, whether that's family or friends, or especially in a time like this. I think everyone that's listening to this podcast should take 12 seconds, pause it, text someone they love when I said that you thought about, reach out to them, say hello, say hi. I value depth in relationships and, voice communication, not just texting or DMs or whatever it is. Like I like FaceTime and I like audio. And I think that's something that I try to do on a daily basis, is to continue to grow and enhance relationships, whether that's a couple text messages to friends I haven't talked to in a while, or to, pick up the phone and call someone I love. That's something that I just add into bits and pieces of my day. But other than that, it's more so recently just being a student of my calendar. I booked 15 podcast interviews this week, reached out for 3 hours to people on Instagram, and people got back to me quickly. And this week, I'm doing 3 podcasts a day. I'm probably doing one, like me being on someone's podcast a day. And it's something that I'm just doing the things that not only I've been putting off, but maximizing the time when it's available. Right. Because everyone's, like I said before, is willing to do things like this because they're looking to fill their time. And they're like, oh, I haven't done a podcast in a while, or, I've told them no for a while because I'm busy. I'm not busy right now, or it's less busy. And I think that's important on a daily basis. I look for those type of opportunities to stay ahead, to crush it. And, moving into the next 3 weeks of this quarantine and how it continues, I want to do 15 interviews a week. Like, why not? That's what I ask myself, is how can I always continue to improve and push myself to the limit, especially in a time like this with uncertainty. And it's to do the things that I might have been putting off or been delaying on top of all the normal day-to-day business that I'm doing. But yeah, that's what I would say. It's just consistent, like win the day. That's what I always tell people: win the day, win the month, win the year, right? You can't set these long-term goals but not maximize the day. So for me, I set goals not only daily, but like, for example, I turned 20 in 90 days, and I'm on this like 90-day blitz right now. That's what I'm calling it. I'm like, what do I want to accomplish by the time I turn 20? I'm kind of 50-50 about this concept of like attaching dates to accomplishment, right. Because it's like, okay, it could happen way quicker, or it's, not supposed to happen then, or whatever it is. But I do like attaching them for the sake of like pushing myself for a certain moment in time. I want to accomplish X by that time. And I think a lot of people in a time like this, set a daily ritual, set a 30-day plan, but don't overwhelm yourself. Like if I told you to go drink 100 gallons of water today, you couldn't do it. But if I said, hey, go drink a gallon a day for 100 days, it's easy to digest. And I think that's how people should look at daily rituals and goal setting, is like, do something simple you can do every day and build a habit around it. And that's what I've been doing, at least during this time, is, adding 2 simple things like water and more push-ups and reading and journaling, and making sure I don't miss a day, because it just, it becomes the new version of you if you do it consistently.
Absolutely. And like you said, it's also being intentional in everything that you do, whether it's the relationships or your daily rituals, your habits. So I think that's really, really important. And thank you for sharing with us.
Totally.
So can you talk to us a little bit about the Modi app and what are the
Absolutely.
benefits?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a unique time right now, because I became just, part of Modi from a equity perspective and a team member a little over a year and a half ago. And it's been a project that has been fascinating because I do a lot of consulting myself, whether that's personal branding or podcasting or social media, execution for building brands. And the Modi app is a platform where overall it's a peer-to-peer consulting app where you can charge per minute and send on-screen invoices. And especially in a time like this with all these businesses shutting down, in-person meetings and transactions aren't happening as frequently, and you'll see colleges using platforms like Zoom. And for us at Modi right now, we have been seeing a lot of growth this past couple of weeks in terms of doctors and lawyers consulting with patients or clients on the Modi app, getting, billed per minute. And it's a great way for people to conduct business and get paid for their time on their smartphone. Right now, it's an app that's only on iOS, and we're looking to expand. And we have a lot of interest from different law firms in New York that are using it with their clients when the office is shut down. And it's definitely cool to see the growth and the opportunities that are coming up with it. And I'm just completely fascinated by the whole team itself with how they built it out and the simplicity of it and how it feels when you're on it. And it's definitely something I'm passionate about that I see myself being a part of until we either sell or bring on a great team in terms of an investment. But as of right now, it's just, getting the right people on, getting individual consultants to, utilize it, but also looking to close those bigger deals with law firms or medical institutions to use it with their patients. And especially in a time like this where you can't be with 10 people a day because it's not socially accepted, right? But yeah.
Accepted. No, it's true though. So it's good that you're seeing an opportunity in these times. So I'm sure, especially with Zoom, you could imagine how many people are utilizing Zoom now.
Oh yeah,
all these virtual platforms. So Casey, considering you are only 19 years old, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently?
It's funny because my honest answer is I wouldn't want to change anything that's happened in my journey at all because the lessons is where the growth is. But in terms of, for example, even these last couple of years, I always ask myself, it's okay, how can you just be better every single day? And obviously there's things you could have, would have, and should have done.
Right.
You can't live in the past. And I think the most important thing for growth is, okay, who do you want to become, right? Whether that's habits or business or whatever it is, who do you want to become in the near future and then the long-term future, and start mapping out your daily habits to that. And regarding change, like I said, there's nothing I would want to change, but yeah, I'm just in love with the process. People ask me okay, what's your definition of success? And I think that my definition of success is falling in love with the process and not being attached to an outcome. That's my most honest way to put it. So yeah, I wouldn't say I would change anything for the sake of the lessons that I've learned throughout the journey have been super impactful. And, it's the lessons that shape you moving forward into your career, right?
Absolutely. So considering the times that we are in with COVID-19 and the stay-at-home order, what are you currently studying and how are you testing your creativity?
Yeah, so I would say I'm always a long-term student. Last, I would say, week, there's 2 different programs that I'm in. One's the 100 Million Mastermind with Dan Fleshman and their whole team there. And then Masterclass is something I've been kind of diving into. I just recently watched this negotiation video with Chris Voss. He's an FBI negotiator beast, and he has a book called Never Split the Difference, and now I'm interviewing him from that. So whatever I'm studying, I try to look for points where I can interview people and get closer to them to ask them more in-depth questions. But definitely Masterclass is phenomenal. I'm loving it so far. And then 100 Million Mastermind experience is just Dan Fleshman has a great online community with great people where they talk about whether that's raising capital or leadership or brain training or whatever it is. But I would say that's how I'm continuing to learn on top of just reading on a daily basis, different books, and trying to dive into new topics that I might have been putting off, whether that's I just interviewed this guy, Ben Greenfield. He's a biohacker, and he's been on Joe Rogan a couple of times. And he's just, he was ranked the top 100 healthiest people in the world. And he's just an absolute legend. Wrote a huge book called Boundless about how to optimize your brain. So I'm just trying to ask different people questions. For example, in terms of creativity, I want to interview more doctors and lawyers and like politicians potentially to ask about the current climate of the economy and everything happening and getting their predictions. So that's how I'd say I'm testing my creativity, is like reaching out to people that maybe I wouldn't have on my podcast from a business perspective, but I slowly want to transition to not only just asking and interviewing business like experts, but just world-class people that have an abundance of knowledge in a certain topic, like doctors or whatever it is. So I definitely am testing my creativity through new interviews in different industries that have nothing to do with business. Like this morning I interviewed this wonderful lady, Elise who is she hosts the TED Talks Daily podcast. It's in the top 20 podcasts in the world, millions of downloads an episode. She's a broadcaster, right? She just started her first company, which helps people with podcasting. But I'm fascinated with her story of how she's been able to work with NPR and with TED, and what she's doing to host one of the top 20 podcasts in the world, and to get her insights from a industry leader in that world. It's new for me because I'm usually interviewing CEOs and executives and business leaders and talking about team building, investments, and all that sort of stuff. So that's definitely what I'm looking at in terms of new creative opportunities that I'm trying to maximize.
Awesome. Has there ever been somebody that you really wanted on the Rise of the Young, but you just still cannot seem to land?
I would say, yeah, there's a lot. The list could go on and on. I mean,
like your top three.
I mean, I think top three are like The Rock, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, right? It's like from a business perspective, but I want to interview, Ellen, Oprah, Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, Kevin Hart, The Rock, Jeff Bezos, Peter Thiel, all these business guys as well. But just like, not even from like an A-list perspective, but I just want to interview and sit down with the world's greatest minds, right? That's just a goal of mine. So in terms of like near future, like I have a goal this year where I want to interview 12 billionaires, a billionaire every single month, right? Like last year I interviewed Tillman Fertitta. He's, worth $5 billion, owns the Houston Rockets, beast. And that was the first billionaire I interviewed. And I don't say billionaire from a financial perspective, but just in the sake of the Forbes billionaire list, right? There's only 2,200. If I could interview, sit down with, meet, and connect with 12 of them, like that just adds so much leverage and authority in my world. So that's definitely a goal in terms of interviews. And it's funny because it's slowly just unfolding. Like tomorrow I'm interviewing the CEO of Shutterstock, who is a billionaire. Shutterstock is like a massive publicly traded company that started in 2002. And it's just checking off those boxes one by one. So I think about it like, okay, who's in my world that I'm close to that I haven't gotten yet? And then who's like the ultimate long-term list? Because I want to interview, and this is another way I look at it, like top broadcasters. Like I had Jason Kennedy on my show, who's the host of News. He's amazing. I want to interview Joe Rogan for sure. Like I want to interview the top interviewers. I had, Larry King on the show, and that was an interesting perspective for me because he's usually the one asking questions, right? So I want to do a huge round through the top broadcasters and then, the top actors, the top scientists, and just consistently shift and evolve. That's at least how I see my future unfolding, is to never being attached heavily on one industry in terms of interviews, but to just create a great conversation with the people I'm interviewing through my curiosity and their journey.
I love that, man. I love it. So what's next for you, Casey?
Yeah, I mean, I would say something I'm super excited. I can't talk about everything right now, but it's the podcast software where I'm overall going to be helping connect podcasts with guests and advertisers. And it's going to be an amazing project that I'm pouring all of my time and attention into, because overall I'm looking to solve my own problem with this, right? I get asked multiple times a month of, okay, how can I be on your show? How can you get me connected with other shows, X, Y, and Z? And there's no easy system in place or product out there that I've seen that's effective that will connect podcasters with guests or advertisers in an effective way. So I want to solve that problem. That's where I'm putting a lot of my time into now. And, I'm going to be doing a huge release at the time of when it will come out. There's no exact date yet, but we'll definitely have to do a circle, round 2 podcast when it launches, because it's something where I'm very excited about it. And I know it's going to completely change, if not like revolutionize, a part of the podcast industry. Even though it is a niche community, it's growing year after year, and the advertising revenue is compounding and moving in a positive direction. So that's definitely where I'm spending all my time, that when the time comes for us to circle back to it, we'll definitely go more in depth.
Absolutely, man. I'm super excited for that, even as a podcast host. So I can't wait to hear about it. And final question before we wrap things up. How do you intend to leave a legacy?
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think for me, I asked Larry King, I was like, what makes people great? And he said, great people are driven. And I believe not only through my actions, but more so what I want to accomplish long-term. Like, your legacy is left every single day, right? It's like a long journey that you're stepping in mud, where every step you leave is a footprint and a footprint and a footprint. And I put a lot of value on communication and, like, being vulnerable and being open and being, like, easy coming in terms of just meeting people. But overall, my legacy, I want it to be shown through just the characteristics that I could name, whether that's honesty or integrity or just dedication, persistence. I mean, I could go on and on about the key characteristics of the people who I admire. But I mean, that is a question that I believe will evolve and grow with me as I grow. But right now, it's just, I grew up in a community where it was okay. My mom's a teacher. My dad works at a tobacco company. I have two older brothers. They went to college. They still live at home. And the standard was not, like, the standard was set in terms of go to college, get a job, be 401k, and that's more so the strategy, which is like 90% of America, right? In the world of, like, mediocre, this is probably what you're going to do, and, don't test anything else because you're going to fail, and, whatever. So for me, it's just through my actions and through what I'm building to create awareness for potential of the opportunities that are out there, especially, whether there's a kid in Michigan or Oklahoma or Nebraska that knows that they're meant to be here for a bigger purpose, is to give, whether that's inspiration, especially right now for people that that don't have mentors in their life, that, came from an environment where their standards are set and they're allowing them to feed into their trajectory. And I think it's really important that at a young age, people start to really understand that there's so much opportunity out there, whether that young in terms of age or experience. Because I know some, late 30-year-olds that are like, okay, what do I want to do with my life? But they're so aware of the opportunities. And I think for me, it's just continuing to evolve and help people become aware of what's out there and to just create optimism in the world. Because a lot of people, they see things in a pessimistic mindset, and I don't believe in that, and I don't think it's necessary at all times. And obviously in certain situations, yes, but I just believe in, positivity, optimism, and, changing the way you look at things, because you control your attitude. And I want my legacy to embody, a lot of what I just covered, and in a simple sense, just to live through my actions,
Absolutely, man. Really appreciate that. And it's true, like you say, like everybody, it goes back to what society expects. Times have changed. We have evolved, and it's not necessarily you have to take the traditional route to get you where you want to be. So
Yep.
The fact that you're living your purpose and you're fulfilled and you're helping other people in the process speaks so many volumes. So what does your family think of it? Like, have they realized like what you do for a living?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because all my family, they're still in Virginia. I have family in North Carolina and, like, New Jersey. And it's grown and evolved to, like, for example, when I first would ask my parents, like, hey, like, I want to go to speak at this event in San Diego. They were like, that's insane. What are you talking about? Like, we've never been to California. We haven't flown on a plane in 30 years. And I was continuously challenging their normal, right? Like, when I flew my dad out to California with me, and then my mom and I got flown out to LA, the last 4 years, it's been a consistent, like, showing them and proving through my actions what's possible that has allowed them to truly accept, like, the situation of, hey, when I graduate high school, I'm going to move across the country with my best friends and just leave, right? And they had to accept that. And it didn't come from just saying and trying to sell them and pitch them. It was through my actions of whether that's starting to make money, starting to connect with powerful people, to just, like, them seeing my persistence and dedication. I think that's the most important thing. Just, having two parents that are together that support me. It wasn't that they didn't, want me to pursue my passions. It's because they were afraid of, like, oh, is this going to be a career? Is this short term? Is he going to want to go back to college? Whatever it is, like, they didn't see the world how I saw it based on how they were raised and what their life has turned into. So it's like, you have to really just understand you have your goals. And yes, close friends and family, they can help make decisions for you, but at the end of the day, you got to make your own decisions, right? Like you need to figure out what you truly want and attack it and do everything you can to like take that next step in the direction you want to move in a positive way. But I talk to my family every day. I have a really great relationship with my mom, my dad, my brothers, and I try to always maintain that. Last year I went to Virginia like 6 times. Like every 2 months I'm going back home to say what's up, So it's definitely something that they love, that the opportunities for like my brothers have came to all my events in Arizona or Los Angeles, and they've met some of their idols, whether that's drama or Rob Dyrdek or like, people they follow on social media or rappers, whatever it is, like people that I just connect with on social, where it's challenged them to think bigger, and it's opened them up to this whole entire world of like possibility. And I think that's the most beautiful thing. Like tonight, it's so funny. I texted my brothers last night and I sent them a Zoom link, and I'm like, yo, 7 o'clock tonight, we're just chatting, and I'm going to like just fire them up and like tell them like, dude, because they both work at a restaurant. They're both kind of confused on where they want to go with their life. And for me, it's like, they just need to attack opportunities and be relentless, and I think they're lost in a way, but I provided a vehicle and a lane of like, wow, not only what's possible, but what's possible with dedication, with hard work, with a consistent, passion for something. Because they saw me skipping a week of school and going to LA and coming back and going to New York. And meanwhile, they're just seeing their little brother travel all over. It inspired them. And I think I always want to be an inspiration for my family and, help them learn new traits. And I'll send my mom podcasts to listen to, and whether that's Jay Shetty or Lewis Howes or whatever it is, but it's an important part of my life in terms of family and like how I want to, build with them in terms of, I don't want to just be someone that gets better and becomes the best version of myself. Like I want everyone in my family to continue to grow and evolve. And obviously you can't control people's actions, but I think through my actions, it creates a reaction in their life, which I'm grateful for.
I'm super excited, Casey, to see what your journey is in the next 5-10 years. And I'm even excited just to continue to learn from you and just see you evolve as a person, as a host, as a businessman, leader. So I'm really excited. And if you can, just let our audience know where they can contact you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say the best place is on Instagram. It's just Casey Adams1. You'll find me on there. It's a verified profile. And then outside of that, my website, just CaseyAdams.com. And I would say those are the two most important things in terms of connecting with me. But if you really want to get some sense into like, my passion, it's the podcast, right? Rise the Young. I've spent dozens and dozens of hours and days of my life doing hundreds of interviews, sitting down with quality people, where I do it with a true passion. And for people to check that out and subscribe and, just check out what's happening there, that would make my day. So definitely check out the Rise the Young podcast. Let me know what you think, and let me know who you'd like me to have on. And I'm always, I always love people sending me guest recommendations of people that they are inspired by that I could potentially sit down with. So those are the 3 best places.
Absolutely. You guys heard it first. I'll include all the links below. Make sure you guys give him a follow, subscribe to his podcast. And Casey, I just want to say thank you again, man. I really, really appreciate you. And it's just a matter of time. I'd be willing to connect with you and just build a relationship and grow. Yep. And like I said, if there's anything that I can do for you, do not hesitate at all. And I'm a huge supporter, and I'm excited, man. I'm excited to see where you go with your journey.